The dust storm had been raging for 3 days, but the aliens didn't care. They never did. Carter pressed his calloused hands against the reinforced glass of the colony's meeting hall, watching the twin shuttles cut through the ochre haze like predatory birds. The craft vessel gleamed metallic green, its hull etched with war trophies, while the Sylar craft pulsed with bioluminescent veins that made his skin crawl. Both had come for the same thing, galatite, the rare mineral that powered their war machines and lay buried deep in the colony's mines. "They're early," Lana murmured, adjusting her auburn braid as she stepped beside him. The faint scar across her left cheek caught the harsh light from the overhead panels. "The Krath weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow." Carter's jaw tightened. He'd been expecting this, the escalation, the pressure, the inevitable moment when neutrality became impossible. They're getting desperate, the war's bleeding them dry. The massive doors to the hall hissed open, and Commander Varkas strode in first, his 7-foot frame casting a shadow across the polished floor. His amber eyes swept the room with predatory precision, taking in every detail: the worn furniture, the scuffed walls, the handful of human miners who served as witnesses. Behind him, the Sylar envoy glided forward on 6 legs, its chitinous exoskeleton clicking with each step. "Humans," Varkas's voice rumbled like distant thunder. He slammed a clawed hand on the table, leaving gouges in the metal. "Your games of neutrality end today. The Krath Empire requires immediate access to your galatite deposits." The Sylar envoy's translator buzzed to life, its mechanical voice flat and emotionless. "The Sylar Collective offers superior terms. Cooperation ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction." Carter remained standing, his brown eyes never leaving Varkas's face. Around the room, the other miners shifted nervously, but he didn't flinch. "Neither of you are welcome here. This colony doesn't pick sides." Varkas's tail twitched, a sign of irritation Carter had learned to read. "You mistake having a choice for having power, human. Your pitiful mining operation produces the purest galatite in 3 sectors. We will have it." "Over my dead body," Carter said simply, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. Lana stepped forward, her green eyes shifting from warm to piercing. "Commander, surely we can discuss terms. The colony has always been willing to negotiate fair trade agreements with both your peoples." The Sylar envoy's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Terms, negotiation, delay tactics, your species excels at meaningless words." "Our species excels at survival," Lana replied, her tone conversational but precise. "We've managed to stay neutral while your empires have been tearing each other apart for 50 years. That takes a certain kind of skill." Varkas leaned forward, his scaled face inches from Carter's. "You have 72 hours to decide. Supply the Krath war machine, or we will take what we need from your corpses." 48 hours, the Sylar envoy corrected. "The Collective's patience is finite." Carter's hands remained steady at his sides, but his knuckles were white. "Then I guess you'll both be disappointed." The alien commanders exchanged glances, the first sign of uncertainty Carter had seen. They'd expected fear, compliance, or at least desperation. Instead, they found a man who looked like he'd already made peace with his decision. "You're condemning your entire colony," Varkas growled. "No," Carter said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I'm saving it." Outside, the dust storm howled against the reinforced walls, but inside the hall, silence stretched like a taut wire. The technician in the corner, his buzzed blonde hair catching the light, grinned despite the tension. The foreman, hunched near the back, fidgeted with something in his pocket, a nervous tic that had been getting worse lately. Lana cleared her throat, drawing attention back to herself. "Gentlemen, surely we can find a middle ground. The colony has always been willing to consider mutually beneficial arrangements." "There is no middle ground in war," Varkas snarled, "only victory and defeat." "Then maybe," Carter said, his brown eyes finally showing a hint of something that might have been amusement, "it's time someone showed you there's a third option." The aliens left without another word, their shuttles disappearing into the storm like ghosts. But Carter knew they'd be back. They always came back. "You realize they'll just bring their fleets," Lana said once the doors sealed. Carter nodded, his fingers already tapping against his leg, a habit that emerged when he was deep in thought. "I'm counting on it." "Carter," She touched his arm, concern creeping into her voice. "What aren't you telling me?" He turned to face her, and for the first time in weeks, she saw something other than grim determination in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or madness. "Come on," he said, heading toward the exit. "There's something I need to show you in the drill hangar." The storm would pass, as it always did, but Carter had the feeling that when it cleared, the galaxy would never be the same. The drill hangar stretched into darkness, massive boring machines looming like sleeping giants in the shadows. Carter led Lana through the maze of equipment, his boots echoing on the metal grating. The air smelled of lubricant and ozone, with an underlying metallic tang that spoke of deep earth and harder work. "I've been thinking about this for months," Carter said, stopping beside the colony's largest deep-core drill. The machine stood 30 feet tall, its tungsten bit designed to punch through solid rock like butter. "Every time those alien scum showed up demanding tribute, I wondered what would happen if we just said no." Lana frowned, her green eyes studying the massive machine. "Carter, this is a mining drill. It's not exactly a weapon." "Isn't it?" He pulled out a datapad, fingers flying across the screen. Holographic schematics bloomed in the air between them, technical drawings that made Lana's breath catch. "The drill uses focused energy pulses to fracture rock. The power core generates enough juice to bore through a mile of bedrock. But what if we reverse the polarity? What if instead of boring inward, we projected outward?" The technician emerged from behind a support beam, his round face lit up with enthusiasm. "Been working on this for weeks," he said, wiping his oil-stained hands on his jumpsuit. "The power requirements are insane, but we've got the colony's main reactor. And the focusing array." He whistled softly. "Boss, this thing could punch a hole through a battleship." "Or disable it entirely," Carter said, manipulating the hologram to show energy dispersal patterns. "Alien tech relies on quantum resonance fields. Disrupt those fields with the right frequency pulse, and their ships become floating scrap." Lana stepped closer, her analytical mind already working through the implications. The range would be limited, maybe a few thousand kilometers at most. "More than enough," Carter replied. "They'll have to come to us. Mining colonies don't run away." A shadow moved in the far corner of the hangar. The foreman, his wiry frame barely visible in the dim light. He'd been acting strange lately, always hovering around conversations, always asking questions that seemed innocent enough but made Carter's instincts itch. "Tom," Carter called out, "something you need." The foreman straightened, his shifty blue eyes avoiding direct contact. "Just checking on the equipment, making sure everything's running smooth." "Everything's fine," Carter said, his voice carrying a subtle edge. "Why don't you go check on the secondary shaft? Reports of some instability down there." Tom nodded quickly, slicking back his thinning hair. "Right. Of course. I'll get right on that." He scurried away, but not before Carter caught him glancing back at the holographic display. "He's been acting odd," Lana murmured once Tom was out of earshot. "Everyone's been acting odd," Carter replied, but his jaw tightened slightly. "The pressure's getting to all of us." The technician bounced on his heels, eager to redirect the conversation. "You should see the power coupling array I rigged up. Used parts from 3 different drill heads, but the resonance frequency is perfect. We tested it yesterday on some scrap metal, fried the electronics on a maintenance drone from 50 meters away." 50 meters isn't going to cut it," Lana said, her tactical mind already working through the problems. "We need range, and we need it fast. Those fleets will be here within days." "Already thought of that," Carter said, his fingers dancing over the datapad. The hologram shifted, showing a massive dish-like structure. "We use the colony's communication array as an amplifier. Redirect the pulse through the main transmitter, and we can reach orbit." "And tell the galaxy we're no longer just miners," Lana added, understanding dawning in her eyes. "We're players." Carter nodded, his brown eyes reflecting the glow of the hologram. "The question is, are we ready to play?" A distant rumble shook the hangar, thunder, maybe, or the sound of atmospheric entry. Through the reinforced windows, they could see new lights in the storm-darkened sky. The alien fleets were already beginning to gather. "We don't have much time," Carter said, powering down the hologram. "The Krath and Sylar might hate each other, but they'll both come for us. Probably coordinate their attacks to make sure neither gets an advantage. Then we need to work fast, Lana said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were contemplating. How long to get the weapon operational? The technician grinned, his blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Give me 72 hours and enough coffee to kill a horse. I'll have this baby humming like a tuning fork. You've got 48, Carter said grimly, maybe less. As if to emphasize his words, another rumble shook the hangar. This time it wasn't thunder. Through the storm, they could see the distinctive energy signatures of Krath and Sylar vessels taking positions in the outer system. They're not just coming, Lana observed, her strategic mind already calculating trajectories and approach vectors. They're staging. Carter's hands clenched into fists. Let them stage. By the time they get here, we'll be ready. But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The foreman's behavior, the timing of the alien arrivals, the way Tom had been asking questions about their mining schedules and equipment inventories. Lana, he said quietly, I need you to do something for me. She looked at him, eyebrows raised. Keep an eye on Tom. Something about him isn't sitting right. Her green eyes narrowed slightly. You think he's up to something? I think, Carter said, watching the lights in the sky grow brighter, that we're about to find out just how many enemies we're really fighting. The prototype hummed with barely contained energy, its jury-rigged components sparking in the depths of the abandoned mine shaft. Carter crouched beside the device, adjusting the final coupling with hands that had grown steadier with each passing hour. The weight of what they were attempting pressed down on him like the tons of rock above, but his resolve never wavered. Power levels are holding steady, the technician reported, his voice tight with excitement. Core temperature is within acceptable parameters. This baby's ready to sing. Lana stood at the makeshift control station, her auburn hair tied back in a practical braid, fingers dancing over the jury-rigged interface. Target drone is in position, range 200 meters. If this works... It'll work, Carter said, though his brown eyes reflected the same mixture of hope and uncertainty that filled the cramped chamber. It has to. The abandoned shaft had been perfect for their purposes, deep enough to contain any unexpected energy discharge, isolated enough to avoid detection. The walls were scarred with old blast marks, testament to decades of mining operations. Now they might witness something else entirely. Initiating sequence, Lana announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd made peace with the risks. Power coupling stable, energy building, now. The prototype's hum deepened, becoming something felt as much as heard. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with potential that made their hair stand on end. Carter watched the readings climb, his jaw clenched in concentration. Resonance frequency locked, the technician called out. Oh my God, boss, the harmonic patterns are perfect. Language, Lana muttered, but her grin betrayed her amusement. Even facing the unknown, she couldn't quite suppress her dry humor. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The pulse erupted from the prototype like contained lightning, a wave of energy that turned the air briefly silver. 200 meters away, the Krath drone they'd been using for target practice simply stopped. Its lights went dark, its hovering systems failed, and it crashed to the rocky floor with a satisfying clang. The three humans stared at the silent wreckage, the magnitude of their success settling over them like a physical weight. Jesus, the technician breathed. We actually did it. We built something that can kill alien tech. Not kill, Carter corrected, his voice quiet but firm. Disable. There's a difference. Lana was already moving, her tactical mind shifting into high gear. We need to test it on something bigger, more complex. If this can disable a drone, what about a fighter? A transport? Or a battleship? Carter added, his fingers already tapping against his leg as he thought through the implications. Scale this up with the communication array, and we're talking about something that could reach orbital targets. The technician bounced on his heels, his enthusiasm infectious. I can have the full array modification ready in 18 hours. 24 at the outside. But we're going to need more power. Way more power. The main reactor, Lana said immediately. We shut down all non-essential systems. Redirect everything through the pulse generator. That's risky, Carter warned. If something goes wrong, we lose life support, atmosphere recycling, everything. If something goes wrong, Lana replied, her green eyes meeting his with steady determination, we'll be dead anyway. A soft chime from the communication panel interrupted their celebration. Carter frowned, moving to answer it. The colony's main communication array was supposed to be on minimal power, monitoring only for emergencies. "This is Carter." "Boss," came the voice of one of the surface sentries, crackling with static. "You need to see this. The Sylar fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're holding position at the edge of the system." Carter's blood went cold. "How many ships?" 47 contacts and counting. "And boss, the Krath fleet is moving too. They're not waiting for their deadline." Through the shaft's narrow entrance, they could see the night sky beginning to lighten with the glow of approaching dawn. But the new lights weren't stars. They were the engine signatures of ships that had come to claim their world. "We need to move fast," Carter said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "How long to get the full array online?" 12 hours, the technician said, his grin fading as reality set in. "Maybe 10 if we push hard." "Then we push hard," Lana said, her hand finding Carter's arm. "The colony's depending on us." Carter nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead to the 100 things that could go wrong. The power requirements alone would strain their systems to the breaking point. And if the aliens detected what they were doing... "There's something else," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about Tom, the way he's been asking questions, hanging around when he shouldn't be." "You think he's working for them?" Lana's voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes had gone cold. "I think we need to be very careful about who we trust," Carter replied. "If someone's feeding information to the aliens, they'll know we're up to something long before we're ready." The technician frowned, oil-stained hands clenching into fists. "Tom's been with the colony for 3 years. He's one of us." 3 years is plenty of time to build trust, Lana observed, her strategic mind already working through the possibilities, and plenty of time to plan betrayal. As if summoned by their conversation, footsteps echoed in the shaft above them. Carter motioned for silence, but the approaching figure was already calling out. "Carter, you down there? Got some questions about the power allocation schedules." Tom's voice, nervous and slightly strained. Carter exchanged glances with Lana and the technician. "Stay here," he mouthed silently. "Keep working." He climbed the narrow ladder to the surface, emerging into the pre-dawn darkness. Tom stood near the shaft entrance, his wiry frame silhouetted against the lighter sky. His hands fidgeted with something in his pocket, that nervous tic that had been getting worse. "What do you need, Tom?" "Just wondering about the power grids. Been some fluctuations in the secondary systems. Thought you might know what's causing them." Carter's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The secondary systems were nowhere near the abandoned shaft. There was no reason for Tom to be asking about them unless... "I'll look into it," Carter said evenly. "Thanks for the heads up." Tom nodded quickly, but his shifty blue eyes kept glancing toward the shaft entrance. "Right, of course, I'll get back to my rounds." Carter watched him go, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. But he didn't have time to deal with it now. The aliens were coming, and humanity's best chance of survival was still 12 hours away from completion. He climbed back down the shaft, where Lana and the technician were already packing up the prototype. "How did it go?" Lana asked. "We need to move fast," Carter said grimly, "and we need to watch our backs." Above them, the first rays of dawn were beginning to paint the sky. But in the distance, new stars were rising, the stars of war, come to claim their world. The discovery came at the worst possible moment. Lana had been running diagnostics on the communication array when she noticed it, a narrowband transmission buried in the colony's standard mining reports. The signal was encrypted, but not well enough to fool someone with her background in colonial security protocols. As she unraveled the data stream, her blood turned to ice. Mining schedules, power allocation reports, personnel rotations, and buried in the technical specifications, detailed information about their recent equipment modifications in the abandoned shaft. "Holy crap," she breathed, her green eyes scanning the transmission logs. The signal had been pulsing out for 3 days ever since the alien ultimatum. And the transmission signature? Carter, she called through the comm system, I need you in the communication center, now. 15 minutes later, Carter stood behind her chair, his calloused hands gripping the back of her seat hard enough to leave marks. The technician flanked him, his usual grin replaced by a mask of barely controlled fury. Tom's been selling us out, Carter said, his voice deadly quiet. All of it. Our mining operations, our defenses, our people. Gets worse, Lana said, her fingers flying over the interface. He's not just feeding information to one side. Look at this. The holographic display showed 2 separate transmission streams, one aimed at the Krath fleet, another at the Sylar Collective, both containing the same information, but tailored for each recipient's technological preferences. He's playing both sides, the technician said, his hands clenched into fists. That slimy traitor is selling us to whoever pays best. Where is he now? Carter asked, his brown eyes reflecting something that might have been murder. Maintenance Shaft 7, Lana replied, checking the colony's tracking systems. But Carter, there's something else, something bigger. She pulled up a new display showing power consumption patterns across the colony. According to these readings, he's been monitoring our energy usage. Every spike, every fluctuation. He knows exactly what we're building. Carter's jaw tightened, which means they know. Both fleets are moving, Lana confirmed, her tactical mind already working through the implications. The Krath are accelerating their approach. The Sylar are repositioning to block any escape routes. They're not just coming to demand tribute anymore, they're coming to destroy whatever we're building. The technician slammed his fist against the wall, leaving a dent in the metal plating. We need more time. The array modifications aren't complete. If they hit us now... Then we make sure they don't get the chance, Carter said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Lana, how long do we have? She checked the tactical display, her fingers dancing over the controls. Krath fleet will be in attack position in 8 hours. Sylar forces are already in system. They're just waiting for their allies to get into position. Allies, Carter repeated, tasting the word like poison. Since when do those two work together? Since they realized we're not just a mining colony anymore, Lana replied grimly. Tom's reports mention our experimental weapons development. They know we're building something that could threaten them. Carter began pacing, his boots echoing in the small chamber. His fingers tapped against his leg in the rhythm that meant he was working through problems, calculating risks and possibilities. We need to confront Tom, he said finally, find out exactly what he's told them. And then, the technician asked. Carter's expression grew hard. Then we make sure he doesn't tell them anything else. They found Tom in Maintenance Shaft 7, just as Lana had predicted. He was hunched over a communication panel, his wiry frame barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. His fingers moved rapidly over the interface, transmitting another burst of encrypted data. "Hello, Tom," Carter said, his voice echoing in the confined space. The foreman spun around, his shifty blue eyes wide with panic. The communication device slipped from his hands, clattering to the floor. "Carter, I was just routine maintenance. The power couplings were showing some irregularities." "Like the irregularities you've been reporting to our alien friends?" Lana stepped into the light, her green eyes cold as winter steel. "We know about the transmissions, Tom. All of them." Tom's face went pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been loyal to this colony for 3 years. 3 years of building trust," Carter said, moving closer. 3 years of watching, learning, waiting for the right moment to sell us out. "You don't understand," Tom said, his voice rising to a whine. "They're going to kill us all, both fleets. The only way to survive is to give them what they want." "And what do they want?" Lana asked, though she already knew the answer. "Information about your weapon," Tom said, his composure finally cracking. "They know you're building something. The power fluctuations, the equipment modifications, the way you've been acting, they're offering safe passage off-world for anyone who helps them." Carter's hands clenched into fists. "Safe passage? And you believe them?" "I believed in survival," Tom shot back, some of his old defiance returning. You're all going to die for a handful of rocks and some misguided notion of independence. At least I'm trying to save some of us." "You're not saving anyone," the technician said, his voice thick with disgust. "You're just selling us to the highest bidder." "The highest bidder is survival," Tom replied. "Your weapon won't work. Even if it does, you'll just make them angry. They'll come back with more ships, more firepower. The only way to win is not to play." Carter studied the man he'd trusted for 3 years, seeing him clearly for the first time. "You're wrong about one thing, Tom. Our weapon will work, and it's going to do more than just disable their ships." "What do you mean?" Carter's brown eyes reflected something that might have been satisfaction. "We're not just building a weapon, Tom. We're building a message, a statement that humanity won't be pushed around by anyone." "They'll just adapt," Tom said desperately. "Build new shields, new defenses. You can't fight the entire galaxy." "We're not fighting the galaxy," Lana said, her voice carrying quiet conviction. "We're showing them that humans are worth respecting." Tom looked between them, seeing the absolute certainty in their faces. "You're all insane. This is suicide." "Maybe," Carter said, "but it's our choice to make, and you've just lost the right to make it with us." The technician stepped forward, his round face grim. "What do we do with him?" Carter was quiet for a long moment, his mind working through the options. Lock him in the storage bay. Keep him isolated until this is over. And if he tries to signal the aliens again, "Then we'll know exactly who we're really fighting," Carter said grimly. As they led Tom away, Lana caught Carter's arm. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I didn't mention earlier." "What?" "The weapon. When we scale it up to full power, it won't just disable ships in orbit. The pulse will propagate through hyperspace conduits, following the quantum resonance signatures back to their source." Carter stared at her, understanding dawning. "You're talking about disabling entire fleets, not just the ships here, but every ship connected to their networks." "Every ship within 1,000 light years," Lana confirmed. "Both empires simultaneously. We're not just building a weapon, Carter. We're building something that could end their war." Carter's fingers stopped tapping against his leg. "And start a new one." "Or," Lana said, her eyes meeting his, "force them to the negotiating table." Above them, the alien fleets continued their approach, unaware that their fate was being decided in the depths of a mining colony by 3 humans who refused to bow. The colony's main reactor hummed with unprecedented strain as Carter pushed the power output beyond all safety specifications. Warning lights bathed the control room in crimson, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. They had accelerated their timeline from 12 hours to 6, a desperate gamble that could save them or destroy them. "Core temperature is climbing past the red line," the technician reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chamber's cooling systems. "We're pushing her harder than she was ever meant to go." "She'll hold," Carter said, his voice carrying more confidence than he felt. "These old Mark 7 reactors were overbuilt. They can take it." Lana stood at the tactical display, her green eyes reflecting the glow of approaching alien fleets. "We don't have much choice. The Krath Vanguard will be in weapons range in 4 hours. If we're not ready—" "We'll be ready," Carter said, his calloused hands dancing over the reactor controls. "We have to be." The confrontation with Tom had shaken the colony more than Carter wanted to admit. Word of the betrayal had spread quickly among the miners, creating an undercurrent of suspicion and fear. But it had also galvanized them. The remaining workers threw themselves into the preparations with desperate efficiency, knowing that their survival depended on the success of Carter's impossible weapon. "Power coupling to the communication array is stable," reported Jenkins, one of the senior miners. "But, boss, the transmission dish wasn't designed for this kind of energy load. We're rigging it with everything we've got, but—" "But it might not survive the first shot," Carter finished. "I know. We'll get one chance at this." "One chance to face down 2 alien fleets," Lana muttered, her fingers flying over the tactical interface. "The Krath are bringing everything they've got. Battleships, carriers, support vessels, 47 ships in total." "And the Sylar?" the technician asked. 33 ships, but they're all heavy combat vessels. No support craft. They're planning to hit us hard and fast." Carter moved to the main display, studying the fleet formations with an engineer's eye for detail. They're not coordinating as well as they could be. Too much mutual distrust. The Krath are taking the direct approach, straight-line assault. The Sylar are trying to flank us, but they're staying too far apart. That's our advantage, Lana said, understanding immediately. They're more worried about each other than they are about us. Exactly. Carter's brown eyes reflected something that might have been satisfaction. They expect us to collapse under the first assault. They're not prepared for a coordinated defense. The technician looked up from his modifications to the pulse generator. Defense? Boss, this isn't a defensive weapon. This thing is pure offense. Disable their ships and hope they don't have backups. That's where you're wrong, Carter said, pulling up a new schematic. Lana's right about the hyperspace propagation. If we time this correctly, we can hit both fleets simultaneously, along with any reinforcements they might be hiding in the outer system. And if we're wrong? Jenkins asked. Carter's jaw tightened. Then we find out if humans are as good at dying as we are at living. A chime from the communication system interrupted them. Boss, came the voice of the surface sentry, you need to see this. The aliens are broadcasting on all frequencies. Carter activated the main viewer, and Commander Varkis's scaled face filled the screen. The Krath leader's amber eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction. Humans of the mining colony, Varkis rumbled, his voice carrying across the void. Your time has expired. You will surrender immediately and provide full access to your Galatite deposits. You will also surrender all personnel involved in the development of experimental weapons. The image shifted, showing the Sylar envoy's chitinous form. Resistance is futile. Compliance ensures minimal casualties. Your weapons project is known to us. Submit now and face merciful extinction. Merciful extinction, the technician muttered. Real generous of them. Carter studied the alien commanders, noting the subtle signs of strain in their postures. They're nervous. Look at Varkis. His tail is twitching more than usual, and the Sylar envoy's mandibles are clicking in their stress pattern. They're afraid of what we might have built, Lana said, her analytical mind working through the implications. They know we're not just miners anymore, but they don't know exactly what we've become. Then let's keep them guessing, Carter said, activating the colony's transmission system. This is Carter, speaking for the independent mining colony of Kepler 442b. We reject your ultimatum. We've been neutral in your war, and we intend to stay that way. Varkis's image leaned forward, his scaled face showing surprise. You dare refuse the combined might of two galactic empires? We dare to choose our own path, Carter replied evenly. You're welcome to try to change our minds, but I should warn you, we've made some modifications to our mining equipment. You might find the experience educational. The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in tense silence. That was either brilliant or completely insane, Lana said. Probably both, Carter admitted, but it might buy us the time we need. The technician was already back at work, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Power coupling to the main array is complete. Targeting systems are online. We're as ready as we're going to be. Owen, how long until the weapon is fully charged? 3 hours, maybe less if we push the reactor harder. Carter nodded, his mind already moving to the next phase of the plan. Lana, I need you to coordinate with the other colonies in the system. If this works, they'll need to be ready for the aftermath. And if it doesn't work, then it won't matter, Carter said grimly. But I think it will. I think we're about to show the galaxy something it's never seen before. What's that? Carter's brown eyes reflected the glow of the alien fleets, now visible even through the colony's reinforced windows. What happens when you push humans too far? Above them, the stars themselves seemed to dim as the alien armadas blotted out the sky. But in the depths of the colony, something new was stirring. A weapon born of desperation and human ingenuity, ready to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The war between the Krath and Sylar empires had lasted 50 years. In 3 hours it would end. The first alien fighters screamed through the colony's atmosphere like metallic locusts, their energy weapons carving molten scars across the rocky landscape. Carter watched from the command center as the Krath and Sylar forces established a perimeter around the colony, their ships forming a deadly net that blocked out the stars. "They're not trying to destroy us," Lana observed, her tactical mind analyzing the attack patterns. "They're trying to capture our equipment intact." "Which means we still have our ace in the hole," Carter replied, his fingers dancing over the weapon control interface. 2 hours until full charge. We need to hold them off until then." The technician's voice crackled through the comm system from the communication array. "Boss, they're jamming our long-range transmissions. We're cut off from the other colonies." Carter's jaw tightened. "Keep trying to break through. Even a short burst might get a message out." Outside, the ground trembled as heavy Krath assault shuttles landed, disgorging armored troops. Simultaneously, Sylar ground units, their chitinous forms shimmering, began to advance from another direction. The colony's automated defenses, hastily repurposed mining drones armed with salvaged plasma cutters, engaged the invaders, their limited firepower barely slowing the alien advance. "They're deploying ground forces," Lana reported, her voice calm despite the escalating chaos. "Standard pincer movement. They'll try to breach the main habitat module." "Jenkins, divert power from non-essential life support to the perimeter defenses," Carter ordered, his eyes glued to the tactical display. "Give them hell for every inch." Jenkins, the senior miner, nodded grimly, his hands already flying over the controls. "Aye, boss, they'll earn every step." The technician, still at the main reactor, yelled, "Core temperature is critical. We're at 110% capacity. Any more strain and she'll blow." "Hold it," Carter commanded, sweat beading on his forehead. "We're almost there. 1 hour, 55 minutes. Explosions rocked the command center as alien fire impacted the outer shields. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the lights flickered ominously. Lana stumbled, catching herself on the console. "Shields are at 60% and dropping fast. They're concentrating fire on the main power conduits." "They know," Carter muttered, his mind racing. Tom's betrayal had given them too much information. The aliens knew where to hit them, where their weaknesses lay. Suddenly, the comm system burst to life. "Carter, it's Tom. He's somehow gotten out of the storage bay. He's heading for the communication array." The voice was frantic, one of the guards from the storage bay. Carter cursed. "He's going to try and disable it. Lana, you and Jenkins stay here. Keep the defenses up. Technician, stay on the reactor. I'm going after him." "Carter, no," Lana protested. "You're needed here. The weapon—" "The weapon won't matter if he cuts the power to the array," Carter interrupted, already sprinting for the exit. "Keep it charging. I'll be back." He burst out of the command center, the sounds of battle echoing through the corridors. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal. Miners, armed with whatever they could find, were fighting a desperate rearguard action against the advancing alien troops. Carter moved with a grim determination, dodging plasma blasts and laser fire. He knew the layout of the colony better than anyone, every shortcut, every maintenance tunnel. He took the fastest route to the communication array, his heart pounding in his chest. He found Tom at the base of the massive transmission dish, a stolen plasma cutter in his hands. The foreman was frantically trying to sever the main power cables, sparks flying as the cutter bit into the reinforced conduits. "Tom, stop!" Carter yelled, his voice hoarse. Tom spun around, his eyes wild with fear and desperation. "You fools! You're going to get us all killed! I'm doing this for everyone!" "You're doing this for yourself!" Carter retorted, lunging forward. He tackled Tom, sending the plasma cutter skittering across the floor. They grappled, rolling on the metal grating. Tom was wiry but surprisingly strong, fueled by a desperate fear. "They promised me safe passage!" Tom screamed, trying to claw at Carter's eyes. "They promised—" "They lied!" Carter roared, slamming Tom's head against the floor. The foreman went limp, unconscious. Carter quickly bound his hands and feet with some discarded cabling, then looked at the damaged conduits. The plasma cutter had bitten deep, but hadn't severed them completely. There was still a chance. He scrambled back to his feet, checking his comm. "Lana, I've got Tom. The array's damaged but not severed. How much time?" "Less than an hour, Carter. The Krath are breaching the outer habitat." Lana's voice was strained, punctuated by explosions. Carter raced back to the command center, his mind a blur of calculations. The damage to the array would slow the charge, but they couldn't afford to stop. He burst back into the command center, gasping for breath. "Status report!" "Shields at 30%, Jenkins yelled. "They're almost through." "Reactor critical," the technician shouted, his face pale. "She's gonna blow!" Carter ignored them, his eyes fixed on the main display. The alien fleets were closing in, their attack patterns tightening. He had to make a choice. "Technician, divert all remaining power to the weapon. Bypass all safety protocols, every last joule." "Carter, you'll melt the reactor," the technician protested. "Do it," Carter roared. "Lana, target both fleets. Focus on their command vessels. Jenkins, keep the shields up as long as humanly possible." Lana nodded, her face a mask of grim determination. "Targeting locked. Ready when you are, Carter." The command center shuddered violently as the outer shields finally collapsed. Alien troops poured into the habitat, their weapons blazing. The sounds of battle were now deafening, just outside the reinforced door. "Now!" Carter screamed, slamming his hand down on the activation console. A blinding flash of light erupted from the colony's communication array, a pulse of pure, focused energy that ripped through the atmosphere. It wasn't a beam, but a wave, expanding outwards at incredible speed. In orbit, the Krath and Sylar fleets, caught completely off guard, were engulfed by the pulse. Their quantum resonance fields, the very fabric of their advanced technology, flickered, wavered, and then collapsed. Lights died on battleships, engines sputtered, and shields dissolved into nothingness. Fighters spiraled out of control, their systems fried. Transports drifted aimlessly, their crews suddenly blind and deaf. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Not a single ship was destroyed, but every single one was rendered utterly inert. The Krath and Sylar empires, locked in a 50-year war, were suddenly left with hundreds of thousands of tons of useless metal floating in space, their advanced technology reduced to scrap by a single perfectly tuned frequency. Silence descended upon the command center, broken only by the distant sounds of confused alien troops. They had stopped firing. They were no longer advancing. They were simply lost. Carter, Lana, and the technician stared at the tactical display, which now showed hundreds of inert alien vessels drifting silently in orbit. The Krath and Sylar forces on the ground, cut off from their command and suddenly powerless, were in disarray. We did it," the technician whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Not just here," Lana added, her eyes wide with understanding. "The pulse propagated through hyperspace. Every Krath and Sylar ship within 1,000 light-years, they're all inert. Their war just ended." Carter felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but also a profound sense of grim satisfaction. He had gambled everything, and it had paid off. Humanity had sent its message. Over the next few days, the colony became a beacon. The inert alien ships, now harmless, were slowly boarded by human teams. The Krath and Sylar troops on the ground, their advanced weapons useless, were rounded up and disarmed. There was no resistance. They were too shocked, too bewildered by the sudden, inexplicable collapse of their technology. Word of Kepler 442b spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Kepler pulse, as it came to be known, had done what 50 years of war could not. It had forced the Krath and Sylar to the negotiating table. Stripped of their technological advantage, their empires suddenly vulnerable, they had no choice but to talk. The other human colonies, once isolated and vulnerable, began to reach out. They had seen what a single, determined colony could achieve. A new era was dawning, not of human dominance, but of human respect. The galaxy had learned that humanity, when pushed too far, possessed a unique and terrifying ingenuity. Tom, still bound in the storage bay, was eventually released. He was a broken man, his fear of the aliens replaced by a profound awe and regret. He spent his days quietly working in the mines, never speaking of his betrayal, but always watching Carter with a new, grudging respect. Years passed. The Krath and Sylar, forced into an uneasy peace, slowly began to rebuild their empires, but with a new understanding of the fragile balance of power. The Kepler pulse became a legend, a deterrent that ensured no empire would ever again take humanity's neutrality for granted. Carter, Lana, and the technician became heroes, though they never sought the fame. They remained on Kepler 442b, overseeing the colony's growth and ensuring that the weapon, now carefully guarded, would only ever be used as a last resort. One evening, as the twin suns of Kepler 442b set, casting long shadows across the now bustling colony, Carter stood with Lana on a ridge overlooking the mining operations. The air was clean, the dust storms a distant memory. New ships, human design, now dotted the skies, ferrying resources and people between the growing network of independent colonies. "We changed everything, didn't we?" Lana said, her voice soft. Carter nodded, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. "We showed them that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting, but in refusing to be fought." The war between the Krath and Sylar empires had lasted 50 years, and in one single decisive strike humanity had ended it, not with destruction, but with a profound, galaxy-altering silence. The age of human neutrality was over. The age of human respect had just begun.